Štovani čitatelji Večernjeg lista i gledatelji Večernjakove televizije, danas imamo posebnog gosta iz svijeta sporta, ali dakako i iz svijeta borbe za ljudska prava i svijeta političkog aktivizma. Naš gost je jedan od najvećih, ako ne i najveći šahista svih vremena, jedan od najtrofejnijih, Gari Kasparov, hrvatski građanin, dakako poznati po tome da ovog časa živi na dvije adrese. Jedna je njujorška, a druga je hrvatska podstrana pored Splita. Stoga nam je doista veliko zadovoljstvo imati ga danas online u našem programu i vjerujemo da će ovaj razgovor biti zanimljiv kao što su i svi razgovori sa gospodinom Kasparovom. Mr. Kasparov, welcome to Večernji list podcast. We are here to announce the new season of Grand Chess Tour, including the Zagreb tournament. Also, we would like to talk about your activities in human rights field and also about Russian invasion to Ukraine as one of the main topics in your political activism. But first, let's start with chess. So, please, as one of the initiators, what can you tell us about Grand Chess Tour in 2023?
It's now a traditional tournament, and Zagreb one of the venues, traditional venues. And from the very beginning, when I obtained my Croatian passport, I wanted to make Croatia the center of chess activities in the region. I started Kasparov Chess Foundation Adriatic and did my best to bring best tournaments to my new home country. And Zagreb 2023 is one of the best events that will feature all the top players, including Magnus Carlsen. And it's something that firmly puts Zagreb and Croatia on the chess map. Everybody knows that in summer, on July, so the best players in the world gather in Zagreb to be part of these largest professional chess series in the world.
Do you have already confirmation for Magnus Carlsen taking part in this Zagreb tournament?
Yes, Magnus is playing. So he's not playing in the whole tour, but he selected two events. So where he plays, and he loves playing in Zagreb. So that's one of the events that he's taking part.
As far as I know, you have strong support from Croatian government in organizing this tournament. Who is the person in the Croatian government with whom you cooperate the most?
Look, it's tournament is sponsored privately, so 90% of the money for the tournament comes from the private source. It's the Romanian company that has been spreading the activities. It's a betting company, Superbet, and they started in Bucharest. Then they included tournaments in Zagreb, in Warsaw, and now they're planning even to expand the activities into Western Europe. So. The man who runs the company, who was the founder, he is a Serbian who just spent most of his early days in France, Sasha Dragic, and he was a national master, so pretty strong player. So he has big passion for chess. And as for Croatian government, so again, I have many friends there, but I've been always working with Prime Minister Plenković and his cabinet.
And the chief of cabinet, Mr. Zvonimir Frka-Petešić, is a passionate chess player, as
Absolutely,
I know.
And I know that if we have any logistical challenges, so Zvonko is always available just to help us.
Have you heard about a boy, 11-year-old kid named Hussein Besou? He is the kid, refugee from Syria, and he's just 11-year-old, and he will plays very soon for Germany senior team. Yeah.
Look, yeah, I know the name, but again, it's not yet had a chance to actually look at him. But we are doing a lot of activities for Kasparov Chess Foundation, which started in America, and we expanded our programs to Europe now. And I've no doubt that the boy of that talent will be eventually, brought under our radar.
Let me ask you this question. Will there be Russian and Belarusian players on this tour?
It's the we had for a long time we had only one player, so it's Jan Nepomniachtchi. But the reason we have not excluded him, that from the very beginning he signed a letter of many Russian grandmasters opposing the war. So we decided that it would be probably counterproductive to exclude him at that stage.
What is your general opinion about having Russian and Belarusian athletes in the biggest world sports competitions like World Championships and Olympic Games?
Unless they take a strong position against the war and against Russian invasion of Ukraine, and make very clear distinction between them and Putin's fascist dictatorship, I would not be supporting their participation.
Yeah, some people would say, should athletes suffer because of the decisions of and the moves of their political leaders?
Look, it's about the principle, because while we're talking about suffering, I think this word is probably not appropriate, because who is suffering now are the Ukrainians. They are living under bombs, under constant attacks as we speak. And yes, I do appreciate the challenges for athletes who spend years of their life training and couldn't participate in the event, and they try to hide behind the Olympic flag or just a neutral flag. But I think it's very important that that we make it very clear. You have to move away from Putin's Russia or from Lukashenko dictatorship to take part in the official competitions.
Yeah, I have just heard the news that yesterday at the battlefield was killed a very promising young Ukrainian boxer who was youth Olympic champion. Yeah, that's the his family is suffering. Yeah, that's
the suffering, and I think that is this, while the free world imposed sanctions on Russia for this barbaric aggression, I think there's still a lot of room to make sure that everybody who doesn't want to leave Putin's Russia behind should feel the consequences.
At several previous Olympic Games, Russian athletes performed without national insignia due to problem with state doping. Is all this a reflection of how Russia is run?
Absolutely, it's a criminal state now, run by Putin's mafia. That's why manipulating the doping tests, it's a part of their mentality. They believe they can cheat, and they believe they are above the law. And while I would not compare it to the open aggression against Ukraine, but those were steps they took to believe that they were immune against any international sanctions.
More than a year has passed since the Russian aggression started against Ukraine. According to your book, Winter is Coming, you predicted that. How do you predict further development of the events?
Yeah, I think I have to correct you. The aggression started 9 years ago, because we're talking about full-fledged invasion. But Putin's aggression started with annexation of Crimea back in 2014. But the last year began the war on the scale that Europe has not seen since World War II. And it's absolutely unprovoked aggression. It's a genocidal war. And I predicted it because I could hear Putin and his propaganda machine preparing Russians for this invasion. And I have no doubt that he would eventually cross all the red lines that were very timidly painted by the free world. There's only one positive outcome of this war. It's the full military victory of Ukraine. That will include total liberation of all Ukrainian territories, all the way up down to Sevastopol. It also must include the reparations to be paid for the enormous damages that have been caused by this aggression. And also, I think that the third condition that should be imposed on Russia before lifting sanctions must be international tribunal for war crimes and genocide. All the criminals must be brought to justice. Otherwise, the European values will be betrayed.
Do you really believe that Putin will be brought to this court in Hague?
I don't know what Putin. Somehow I feel that he may not survive that long. But it's very important that we stick with the principle that everyone who committed these crimes, everybody who initiated these crimes, everybody who was part of this aggression and genocide must be brought to justice. And whether Putin is still alive, fine. If not, again, there's a long list of war criminals. And before they're brought to justice, we cannot start making changes in Russia.
To what extent is international community to blame for today for this situation, to all that happened to Ukraine, and could it have been prevented?
The answer is yes, it could have been prevented, but it's probably we should go way back in time, maybe to the beginning of Putin's rules 20 plus years ago. Because Putin, as every dictator, he grew up with a sense of impunity. He just did this and that, and nobody stopped him. When you look at the carpet bombing of Grozny back in 2000, you may not recognize these ruins from Aleppo 2016 or from Mariupol 2022. And you had unbroken chain of crimes committed by Putin's regime for 22 years. And there were moments where the free world could have demonstrated that there would be a price for that. Definitely in 2014. I'm not even talking about 2008 aggression against the Republic of Georgia, but 2014 was annexation. Annexation of territorial sovereign European state, and Europe and America responded with very, very weak sanctions. I mean, that's almost irrelevant. So it convinced Putin that he could do whatever without paying a price. I guess it was a part of disbelief that the war of that magnitude could have happened in Europe. And even today, we still have voices in Europe that are trying to find excuses for Putin and put this war on hold.
Yes, some those voices say that this war, Russia and Ukraine, is actually a war between Russia and USA. What to say about that?
This is absolute nonsense. America, of course, is supporting Ukraine as every other ally, almost every other ally. So maybe we have to make exceptions for Hungary. But it's a war of the freedom and tyranny. It's a war of the free world against the war of totalitarianism, and it's absolute distortion to pretend that America is fighting Russia. I'm sure there are a few American volunteers, but this is Ukrainian army that is paying, the price in blood and Ukrainian civilians to stop Russian aggression. I think it's the pretending it's proxy war between Russia and America. It's to find a way to soften the blow for Mr. Putin. It's basically playing into Putin's hands because you may have said proxy war in Afghanistan 40 years ago, but this is a real war. This is a Russian-Ukrainian war, and that's why we see Iran and now China helping Russia, dictators helping each other, and America and Germany and Poland and Baltic nations and Romania and even somehow Croatia, all on the side of freedom.
What to say to some analysts, political analysts, who are convinced that if this war ends tomorrow, that relationship between Russia and the West will be smoothed again because of that energy problem, because they didn't have found alternative for Russian gas and oil.
I think they did. I mean, Europe now is just it's leaving, fairly comfortably without Russian gas. So it took less than a year to replace Russian supply, and we have another 10 months, 9 months before next winter to actually add more suppliers to European customers. So I don't believe that relations between Russia and the free world, and especially between Russia and Ukraine, will be restored anytime soon. What can happen is that's the Ukrainian military victory and Russia's geopolitical defeat may lead to changes in Russia, and then we'll have a chance with a new government, with the new people in charge, to start rebuilding these ties. But even with new government, it will take years before we have a chance to repair it.
At the Munich conference, you said, if I'm right, Ukrainian victory is precondition to Russian democracy. So you obviously have a strong belief that Ukraine can win this war.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Ukrainians proved to be very resilient. They survived the first onslaught when very few people believed they could defend their country against Putin's massive military invasion. And now the front line is static. But we could see that Ukraine is gaining strength every day, with more weapons arriving, with more trained soldiers, pilots, and tank drivers that are being taught in America and Europe, and with the quality of the weapons that are being supplied to Ukraine, and with the determination, absolute determination of the Ukrainians to liberate their country, and with an outstanding leadership of Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukrainian president, and his team. I think it's all all indicators that Ukraine is on the verge to victory. The problem again is it's blood. The how much price in blood they pay for this victory. There are tens of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers who already sacrificed their lives, not just winning this war and restoring Ukrainian territorial integrity, but defending Europe against further invasion. They are standing, as a wall, unbreakable wall, on the way of Putin to subdue Baltic nations or Poland or Romania, because Putin had big plans, and Russian propaganda kept saying that Ukraine was the first stop on Putin's way to blackmail Europe and make Eastern Europe subordinate to Russia, as it was during the Cold War.
What does President Putin want to make? New Russian empire?
It's probably not that simple. I think what's in mind is more about the change of the world order. It's not just borders, but it's about the new rules where the might is right. The big countries could dictate the small countries. So Putin will talk to Americans and Chinese, maybe to Germans and French, maybe, or Brits. But basically, it's about big countries. The others should just follow the orders. This is the world that that we lived in 100 years ago. And after World War II, we spent so many resources and energy to build a different world, with agreements, with treaties, with consensus. And Putin wants everything just to disappear. And it's also an existential challenge to the free world, because Putin hates all the ideas about human rights and about the individual rights. It's about absolute raw power that could control individuals. So it's not just a war for Ukrainian territory. It's a war of principles, war of values, and these wars cannot end at a negotiating table. This is a war when one side wins and another loses.
What about USA strong will to dictate some things in this modern world? They also they took part in couple of wars in last 30, 40 years.
Look, what's important to remember that American wars were never about invasions and occupation. They just stayed there and then eventually left. Now, we don't have time to go after every American military intervention, but naturally, America could have intervened in 1990 to 1993 in the Balkans. By the way, I think if America had political will to do it 30 years ago, we would have saved so many lives here, in Croatia, in Bosnia, in Kosovo. They did eventually. Yes, they did, and stopping the genocide in Kosovo in 1999. And again, should we complain about this intervention? I don't think so. So as for Iraq, don't forget, in 1991, Saddam Hussein attacked Kuwait. He annexed the territories, and Americans helped Kuwait independence to be restored. Then they came back because clearly Saddam Hussein was still a threat. And while we know that this invasion didn't go as well as predicted, but still, it stopped, Saddam Hussein from potentially obtaining weapons of mass destruction and continuing his aggressive policies in the region. Yes, it was Afghanistan. But look, do we have to complain about Americans in Afghanistan? Ask Afghanis women. Now Americans left, and we have millions of Afghani women thrown back to the Middle Ages. It's not, it's not black and white. It's not a simple picture. But the Putin's aggression against Ukraine is in black and white. That's very simple. We don't have absolute good in the world. Good, we may argue, but we have absolute evil. Putin is absolute evil. Saddam Hussein was absolute evil. Taliban is evil. Iranian mullahs are evil. So we can look at Bashar al-Assad is evil, and the opposing absolute evil, sometimes requires drastic actions.
If Russia loses this war, and that would mean a return to internationally established borders with Ukraine, what will happen to President Putin?
Putin will be gone. It's well known that every dictatorship needs a myth, to build the legacy of a dictator. And Putin's legacy now is Crimea. If or I would say when Crimea goes back to Ukraine, Putin's myth is blown away. And I don't think Putin politically can survive the liberation of Ukraine. And I believe that the whole power construction in Russia will not survive for long. We will have few 100,000 soldiers, bitter, angry, armed men coming back to Russia. We have refugees, and Russian economy is in terrible shape. And I think there will be a massive social explosion in the country. I don't have a clear scenario 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I cannot give you all the elements of this process, but I can bet you that the moment Ukrainians liberate the Crimea and Sevastopol and put their flag there, I think will be the beginning of liberation of Russia from Putin's fascism.
Is it true that you said if Russia loses this war, many Russian territories eastern of Ural will be sort of Chinese colonies for natural resources?
Look, it's not about Russia losing this war. It's happening with Putin now. When you look at Putin's meeting with Xi Jinping, so it was more like Chinese emperor visiting the governor of the northern Chinese province. The documents they signed, there are 14 documents. If you go through these documents, it's a clear demonstration of Putin's readiness to give up Russian territories, probably half of Russia, under Chinese control. And by the way, let's not forget, according to Chinese historiography, there's a territory of 1.5 million square kilometers that have been illegally annexed by Russia in the 19th century. There were two agreements between Russia and China, one in the 17th century, one in the 19th century. And in the 19th century, Russia took massive territories because Russian empire was strong, China was weak. And Xi Jinping now is openly claiming these territories, which includes Vladivostok, many most lucrative pieces of Russian territories in eastern Siberia and Far East. And that's very serious challenge because China has already huge presence there, where we definitely have millions of Chinese already living in Russia, and it could be the process of simply digesting these territories. The only chance for Russia to prevent it's a change of the government. So the Putin's government is a government of national betrayal. For illusionary goals in Ukraine, Putin is putting Russia under Chinese control. And I think that when Putin is gone, the Russian people will recognize that we have our only chance will be to go back to Europe, paying all the price that will be required to protect the rest of the country from Chinese gradual annexation.
When such a political leader like Chinese president says, I'm against the war, what does that say to you? Probably nothing.
Look, being against the war means nothing today. So it's not about the war, but it's about the whole aggression. War was an instrument that Putin used to obtain territories. So I think that if somebody tells you I'm against the war, let's make peace now, it's most likely it's trying to help Putin to preserve his territorial conquest. No, it's not about being against the war. It's being against using war to get new territories. And that's why if you are against the war and you war for peace, that means you have to make sure that Russia leaves all occupied territories that they took from Ukraine back in 2014, and will pay reparations for the damage that this war caused, and also will make sure that the war criminals will be brought to justice.
Yeah, it's well known that many Russian dissidents are around the world, like yourself, outside of the Russia. Is there any opposition in Russia that could stand up Vladimir Putin?
Opposition is in jail now in Russia.
Yeah.
Alexei Navalny, Volodya Karamurza, and many others. We have thousands of political prisoners in Russia. Russia today is like Nazi Germany in 1944. I mean, what kind of opposition you can have under such conditions? It's a fascist dictatorship that punishes people for any sign of dissent, even for tweet. You do a tweet and you can go in jail for 2 or 3 years. So forget about anything that can happen in Russia before the war is won by Ukraine. Because only the moment when Russia is on the losing side and people understand it, then you could start seeing the change in the public mood in Russia. As of now, people, I think, they're mostly indifferent. They just want to survive. They still believe state propaganda that maybe somehow the wars can be avoided. Maybe we can win the war. Maybe it could be a kind of a tie. We can keep territories. See, what happens the moment Ukrainian troops enter Crimean Peninsula. That will be the moment that the public opinion will shift in Russia, and you will start seeing more protests, even among the elite, because they'll realize that it's over and they have to look for new arrangements.
Yeah, at this moment, somebody could have impression that the majority of Russians support Russian military aggression against Ukraine in the way like Russian media it says.
Look, we don't know. For a simple reason, I wouldn't trust any opinion poll. I believe that it's being asked about aggression, about Putin, about the war. 90% of Russians refuse to answer. Now, of remaining 10%, maybe 80% support the war. Maybe 90% support the war. But I think absolute majority simply doesn't want to talk about it. Which doesn't mean they're against the war. They just don't want to be engaged in debating it. And we know from Russian history that the moment the war goes in the wrong direction, that's the moment of big social change, of social revolt. So that's why, again, I'm waiting for the moment when Russian public will realize that things are going in the wrong direction. And I believe that Ukrainian victory, military victory, will pave the road for Russia to change its governing system.
So you just said in some way that Russian people are living in big fear at the moment. Ordinary people.
It's a big fear. Look, I don't want to offer any excuse. I mean, still, every Russian, myself included, carries collective responsibility for the crimes in Ukraine. But of course, people like myself fought Putin regime for years, so we don't have we're not guilty of these crimes. But collective responsibility is something else. So we all have to recognize that being Russian today, it's a serious challenge for your moral credentials. And many people, millions and millions of my compatriots in Russia, they are not passing this test. So it's like that's Germany. I make this comparison again. So you may not be directly involved in the crimes of the regime, but you are there. and somehow you work, you pay taxes, you keep the economy going, so you are contributing to the war efforts.
As a Russian dissident, you are in exile for 10 years. How much do you miss your homeland?
Look, the homeland is not just, it's not just your apartment, not the streets, not just cities. It's about people. It's about people. It's about culture. And while I feel very comfortable, I live in New York, and between New York and Croatia, so that's why again I found just good locations. My kids were born in New York and grew between New York, Split, and also a few other European places we visit. But when you look at the culture, Russian culture, the political movements, almost all my friends, if they're not in jail or being killed, they're with me now. We just had a conference in Riga. We had many other conferences. We are together. So that's why my world, my Russian world, is not in Russia now. So, and I believe that this war will end with Ukrainian victory, and it will offer us a chance to bring back the true Russian world with Russian culture and political plurality back to Russia and start building a new democratic country.
Since you are one of most famous Putin's opponents, kind of state enemy, do you feel safe?
Here in Croatia, yes. In New York, yes. I wouldn't go to many countries. If you look at the list of my travel in the last few years, I reduced it very, very seriously. So I wouldn't go to most of the African countries, if any. I wouldn't go to most of Asian countries. I wouldn't even go to Hungary, for instance, now, just to be on the safe side. So the answer to your question is I don't know, but what can I do? So I don't have bodyguards. I just live my life. So, and I hope for the best, because would it help, being paranoid about your security? And also when I think about my friends like Boris Nemtsov, who were killed in Moscow, or great, human rights activists and dissidents like Navalny and Karamurza, who are now in jail, and again, thousands of others. When I think about Ukrainians who are fighting now, just, being killed as we speak, by Russian fire, look, I'm in a relatively comfortable situation.
You just said that you are carefully thinking about countries you would like to travel to. Would you travel to Serbia? Because they are friends with
No.
Russian.
No, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. So
what would be particular reason?
No, its reason is not, I'm not expecting Vučić government or Orban government to actually to arrest me. But the problem in these countries, Russian intelligence operations are just they are not prevented by the local security. So it's about countries where Russians feel that they can do whatever. So same with Turkey, for instance. So again, it's not about the government decision. It's basically for them looking the other side. That's something can happen to dissidents like myself.
You were up for sanctions against Russia, also in sports as well. And how much this could affect your reputation in Russian people?
Look, yeah,
because it will affect poor and middle class of Russian society, not oligarchs.
No, it does affect oligarchs. It affects everybody. But again, this is the war that my country now is has launched against Ukraine. This is you can't say it's Putin's war, but it's same way as you said it was Hitler's war or Stalin's war. This is the war conducted by people. Like Ukrainians say, where we don't see Putin around, but we see Russians who are killing us. So that's why if the goal is to make Ukraine winning the war, to help them winning sooner rather than later, so we just have to recognize that the sanctions are helping. Yes, people are suffering. Yes, I agree, but not the same as Ukrainians. You're not being bombed. You're not being killed. So yes, you have some problems of buying the goods that you used to buy, but then it's a price to pay for your unwillingness to oppose dictatorship that launched the war on the neighboring country. So again, it's about choices we make. Majority of Russians decided that they could live with Putin, and they paid no attention to his aggressions prior to the Ukrainian war. Time to pay the price.
Yeah, many ordinary people in Russia believe that even Ukraine is natural part of Russia, and they say that Ukrainian nation does not exist at all. How did Putin manage to convince that crowd about that?
Oh wow, this is amazing. We're in Croatia, and are you surprised? Don't you think that many in Serbia for a long time believed that there were no Croatian nation? It was a natural part of Serbia. It all goes back to Karadzic and Garašani in the 19th century. That was the whole concept of nationalism. Yeah. That the Croats were kind of spoiled Serbs, spoiled by Catholic religion. Same was in Russia. Putin basically used this old myth that Ukrainian nation didn't exist. There are many parallels between the rationale for Serbian nationalism, the traditional old-fashioned 19th century nationalism that was built an idea of Greater Serbia, and all others, the Croats or Bosnians or others, they were just, Serbs who didn't want to recognize it. And with Putin's belief, which is amazing, it's not 19th century, it's not beginning of 20th century. This is the 21st century, and Putin's propaganda kept promoting the idea that the Ukrainian nation didn't exist. So the Ukrainians, just they are just converted Russians, and we just have to bring them back. It's very familiar to Croatia, and I'm quite shocked that some in Croatia, including president, so they don't want to see this comparison.
From your point of view, would you give us could you give us some kind of Putin psychological profile?
No idea. I mean, it's you're asking me to go beyond my professional credentials. He's a dictator who is in power for 20 plus years. I don't think for us normal people, it's possible to understand the mind of somebody who was in power for so long, totally uncontrolled power, no allergy for blood. It's something horrible. It's kind of a monstrous mentality that we cannot even analyze. All I know that as long as Putin stays in power, the war will not end.
Is it true that today's American President Joe Biden, in that time Obama's vice president, looked into Putin's eyes and said he has no soul? That's the man who has no soul.
Well, I don't know whether Biden said it, so definitely President Bush in 2001 said he looked in Putin's eyes and saw his soul, which was total nonsense. I think that he was deceived by KGB operatives, who Putin was. Whether Biden said it, so I don't know. It's good for him, but clearly, I think Biden and his administration recognized that no deal with Putin would be possible.
Trying to describe Putin as a strategist, you said once that he is not a chess player, but he is a poker player. What did you mean by that?
Look, in a game of chess is the game where we play. You have pieces, I have pieces. I can see exactly what you have. So it's everything is open. It's 100% open information. With poker, you can win by having a very weak hand. You can have one pair, but you can bluff. You can just raise the stakes. And if your opponent is weak and it keeps folding cards, you're winning. And Putin, for so many years, bluffed. He had weak hand, but he kept, raising stakes. But now Ukrainian war demonstrated that he had nothing. He just, it's all his bravado about his, army and super weapons. It just, was just nonsense, empty sound. So he's still trying to make some noises about his nukes, but I don't believe that the free world is now ready to buy this blackmail.
Knowing all these things about President Putin, are you afraid of nuclear escalation like some of European politicians are afraid?
No, I'm not. I think it's a blackmail. I think that Putin tried to use it as a threat. I don't believe his generals are willing to die for him. Russia is not just simple dictatorship. It's more like a mafia state. And I think these generals who are all multimillionaires because they were like a parasites, stealing money from massive budget, or Russian budget. Russia spent on war efforts for the last 10 years something like $1 trillion. $1 trillion. imagine if half of this money has been stolen, so that's already made every general and admiral a multimillionaire. I don't believe for a moment they are willing to push these buttons and to die. So it's all a bluff. And it seems to me that the free world now, Americans and Europeans, most of them, recognize it's a bluff and they'll react accordingly.
So you believe that all the countries that have a nuclear weapon can bluff, and probably bluffing with that power?
Well, look, it's very important now not to give in to this bluff. Because if Putin wins, with his bluff now, nothing will stop him from using this bluff against Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, also it's important that other countries will recognize that nuclear bluff will not work. So that's why the American strong position now and very clear indication that the price to pay for this attack will be very high. So I think it's an important message not only for Russia but for other countries that are trying to obtain these weapons, like Iran, for instance.
A couple of weeks ago, I spoke with an elite Ukrainian athlete, karateka, European karate champion, Stanislav Horuna, and he told me that they believe that President Putin has at least 2 body doubles to use for field trips, such it was like this one to Mariupol.
Probably, yeah. Again, is it likely? Yes. I cannot confirm it, but is it likely? Absolutely. Dictators always had them, and Putin is totally paranoid about his security. So whether he was in Mariupol or not, I don't know. I saw some analysis that the person who was in Mariupol and in Crimea was not the same person. Maybe one event was Putin, another one was not Putin. But, it's what is interesting that even if it was double, though I think somehow in Mariupol, I think it was Putin. Somehow I think it was Putin. But, judging from this very edited video, you could see that he lost his arrogance. This is typical arrogance. This is his sarcastic smile. When he just, I'm cheating you, and I'm cheating. I know I'm cheating, but still I can cheat you. You saw somebody who's tired, somebody who lost his drive. So this is like it's a worn out evil. So that's why I prefer to think it was real Putin in Mariupol, because I like this picture. It means that even he recognizes he's on his way downhill, on his way to defeat.
So if you are political leader, president of the country, big country, and you have doubles, does it mean that you are afraid of assassination?
Look, this is the leader and dictator, 2 different things. Yeah. Yeah. It's the dictators always have doubles because they're afraid of assassinations. They also have their own, just its own paranoid ideas about their own importance. If I'm, just a leader of the country, I'm here. I'm now. I don't have doubles. I'm talking to you. So how can you hide? This is just creating doubles means, that you are, you losing part of yourself. I think it's just for a normal person or for democratically elected leader of the country, it's in my view, it's unacceptable unless there is a war. Because I heard stories about Churchill having a double. I heard stories when you're a clear target of assassination. So and it's a war, but it's exceptional circumstances. Also, I'm not sure confirmed historically. So that's why I would strongly disregard an idea for democratically elected leader these days, even to consider having doubles.
How do you see Russia after this war, and do you see yourself in that Russia?
Look, again, the future of Russia depends on the outcome of the war in Ukraine. So Ukraine wins, we'll have a chance. I don't see this chance, will definitely, work out. Maybe we're at the point where 30% chance to succeed, it's already a big result. I think it's likely that some of the Russian territories, currently Russian territories like Tatarstan or Bashkortostan or Chechnya, may decide to go on their own, which I think it's something that we have to accept. The only chance for Russia is to be rebuilt, to cease being an empire and to become a nation state. It's a very painful process. Again, there's no guarantee it will happen. I've been working with Michael Khodorkovsky. We had an article in Foreign Affairs magazine when we talked about transformation of Russia into parliamentary republic that will be based on very loose confederation of many Russian regions. It's the complicated process because the idea of the empire must die in the minds of Russians. That's why we need military defeat in Ukraine to say it's over. Forget about it. No more, dreams about Constantinople or Moldova or Republic of Georgia or Ukrainian territories. We have to concentrate on building our country, which may be smaller than it is today. But the key is that if we don't do this transformation, then half of the country will go to China. So these Russians will have to recognize that our choice is simple. Either we try to go back to Europe to pay all the prices that we have to, or China will start, swallowing parts of Russia, and the rest will simply collapse.
Could Mikhail Khodorkovsky or even you run for the next president of Russia?
I don't think we should talk about elections in Russia because I don't believe there will be elections anytime soon. If Putin government collapses, then the only stable government in Russia will be one that can leave the sanctions, can start integration process. But elections means that you need constitution, you need clear rules, you need political parties. It's a very, very thorough process. And I don't believe that in the next 2 or 3 years after collapse of Putin regime, Russia will be able to go on through the election process. It's a very, very, very complicated process. I'm more than happy to actually help my country in the transition period. I'm not going to become part of the political system, but I believe that I can do a lot by recovering the image of the country and helping it to be integrated in the free world. Because as somebody who just lives around the world and is a big defender of human rights, I know that Russia's role in this global fight between freedom and tyranny could be very important, if not decisive. If Russia is on the side of China, is one story. If Russia moves to the free world, then we have a very strong foundation to challenge Chinese totalitarianism ascending now with Xi Jinping.
As a Croatian citizen, I believe you follow Croatian political scene. How do you comment on the position of President of Croatia, Zoran Milanovic, regarding the Russian military invasion of Ukraine?
I had few opportunities to express my strong disagreement with President Milanovic. Obviously, I have some moral difficulties of challenging him openly, since it was his decision of his government to give me and my wife Croatian passports and helping me at a very, very difficult moment of my life. But still, I believe that it's absolutely wrong for Croatian president to ignore the similarities between the challenges that Croatia suffered after Serbian aggression and Ukrainians suffering from Russian aggression. As I already mentioned in our conversation, the similarities of the ideological background of Putin aggression in Ukraine and Serbian great empire concept that put Balkans at war for over 100 years, so constant wars. So they are too obvious. And Milanovic is a good scholar of history. I know I spoke to him several times when he was a prime minister and afterwards. And I'm surprised that he is ignoring these natural similarities.
Can you recall these days when he, as a prime minister, helped you to get Croatian citizenship?
Look, it was a personal decision of his own, because I had to leave Russia and I had only Russian passport, and I knew that the passport would expire soon, and at any time they could have canceled it, and I needed to find a place, where I had my my new residence. And Croatia was a natural choice. I've been visiting Croatia since 1993. I've been supporting Croatian independence from the very beginning, and it was his clear statement that Gary helped us in 1992 when we fought for our independence. He's in trouble now. We have to help him. So it was a personal decision. That's why I'm always grateful to what he did.
What is your knowledge of Croatian language? Do you use sometimes Croatian language talking with your Croatian friends?
I can read easily. I just, I can definitely, just keep a conversation, but not to have a complicated interviews. I just, I value the quality of my thoughts to actually to diminish it with a language that I don't master completely.
And to conclude this political part of this interview, what is needed to be done to finish the war, to Ukraine winning that war?
Weapons, more weapons to Ukraine, and a clear political will of the free world to stay behind the Ukraine until the country is liberated. It's almost there, but still, the many politicians in America and Europe are afraid of Ukrainian victory could lead to chaos in Russia. So stop worrying about Russia. Think about Ukrainians' liberation as a precondition for any change.
How do you see the role of the biggest nations in the world, like China and India, in this conflict?
I wouldn't put them together. China has ideological reasons, and also China has interest, territorial claims to Russia. So China sees this war as an opportunity to expand its empire. India is more pragmatic. It's about buying cheap oil. I don't think India has any ideological affiliation with Putin's aggression.
Tell us about recent situation in chess, a situation with Magnus Carlsen. So he didn't want to defend his title. So what is going on now?
I don't know why he did it. So you have to ask him. When he's in Zagreb, you can ask him. Yeah. So I mean, for me, it's not a happy moment, because I believe that the world champion had a duty to defend his title, but it's a personal decision of Magnus. Maybe he's bored, maybe he's tired. I have no idea, but he's still playing, and that's good news. So because we can still see him, and doing his magic at the chessboard.
Have you ever been bored to defend your title?
No. I'm just, I'm made of different materials. So I defended for as long as I could. In 2000 I lost to Kramnik, but I always, as long as I play chess, I always fought to be number one.
Do you still play chess for fun?
Yeah, for fun, yes. I just appeared with very, very limited success, because I'm too busy now. My head is just, exploding with other things. But I like to move the pieces around.
Can you talk a little bit about your friendship with Zlatko Klarić?
Oh, it's it goes all the way back to 1981. So it's we met first time when Zlatko was aboard one at Yugoslavia team, the students' championship in Graz, in Austria, and I was board one. We played a match. I beat him. And then in 1982 in Lucerne at Chess Olympiad. So that's how it was the beginning of our friendship. But also I remember us, visiting him in Vukovar during many of my trips to Yugoslavia, because I played many events. I think we actually went to Borovo after it was what, May, after the tournament not Sarajevo. So what just is the oh my God, it's this in 1982. So we just went there. So I ever kept these relations. So because I played in Bugojno. So we played in Bugojno. Then we went to Borovo. So in 1982, and then I played in 1983 in Nikšić, and Zlatko published the first book, my najbolji party. So that's was another event. Then 85 I played in Belgrade, and Zagreb, he was around in 89. So it's just always connections. And in 82 In 92, so that was the beginning of very close cooperation because I led the initiative of or supported Croatian and Bosnian teams to expel Yugoslavian team that was illegally brought into the European Championship. So, and as a captain of Russian team, actually, I managed to do it. And then Zlatko organized my trip to Zagreb, and that was the beginning of my very close cooperation with Croatia.
After your chess career, you started your writing career, writer's career. Do you write some book these days?
Yeah, yes. I had many chess books, many chess books, and I had 3 non-chess books: How Life Imitates Chess, Winter is Coming, and Deep Thinking. So, yes, I think that's available in Croatian. And now I'm working on a new book that hopefully will be released by the end of this year. It's called The World After Ukraine. And that's the book about the challenges to modern civilization and how Ukrainian war is going to help us to solve them.
What other activities did you have last couple of weeks or months?
Oh, look, it's everything I do now is somehow connected to Ukraine. So it's the Ukraine, Russian opposition. I'm still working, just on things like, the cybersecurity and because I've engaged with some of the companies doing that with artificial intelligence. But most of the activities now, they are connected to Ukraine and Russia.
Will you stay now in Croatia until July and Zagreb tournament, or you will travel?
No. I have to go back. Kids go to school. My kids were born in New York, so they go to school in New York. So by April 1st, we should go back to New York. So we move with kids, but we'll be back in summer, of course.